Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I want to start by getting straight to the point. After over 12 years of playing World of Warcraft, I finally played World of Warcraft. That may seem like an odd statement, but I'm going to explain it, and today I hope to take you on a journey through my past month of exploration, accomplishment, and discovery in the world of Azeroth. This is my last video of 2023, and I want to express my most sincere thanks to those of you who have supported and commented on the channel. Whether you're new here or have been on board for a while, I hope you enjoy. And with all that being said, let's get right into it. Some of you are probably familiar with the private server community of WoW that has existed for nearly as long as the retail version of the game. The main purpose of these servers is to recreate or preserve older versions of WoW that have been essentially paved over and replaced with new content on the official Blizzard servers as the years have gone by. There are certain servers designed for single clients. Through different means I won't discuss here, it is possible to run versions of WoW that are basically single-player experiences. Ever since I was very young and had just started playing WoW, this was the setting I found myself in. Through family and family friends, solo WoW was all I ever knew growing up, specifically on a server hosting the iconic era of Wrath of the Lich King. It was a rare sight to even see one other player on, and you can imagine how alien the experience would have been for anybody familiar with the regular MMO environment. No auction house, no dungeons, no raids, no trade chat, and no PvP. Due to some issues with the script library, even things like escort quests, NPC events, and phasing were really out of whack. Despite these shortcomings, WoW quickly became my favorite game of all time, as I'm sure it has for many of you watching, and I couldn't get enough of the lore and exploring the different zones. As I got older and learned more about WoW, there was this small itch in the back of my mind to go try out retail WoW, real WoW. However, that desire never really manifested until the launch of Classic WoW in the summer of 2019. With all the renewed focus on the original game, I was really tempted to take all my knowledge and experience and finally launch into it, but I held off for the time being. A few years later, I'm at university running my small YouTube channel, and with so many players progressing through Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, I found myself with an audience, all of you, who helped motivate me to almost exclusively make videos on cool WoW topics. Despite all the classic hype in the community, I didn't really see the appeal of making a real account when the parts of the game I enjoy, mostly the lore and questing and exploration, were still the same between my private server and the classic servers. That all changed for me a couple months ago watching BlizzCon in my dorm room and hearing the announcement for Classic Season of Discovery. New quests, new runes, and hints of future unrevealed content, all while keeping with the classic style of the game. For me personally, this is exactly what I'd been waiting for. And I took my chance 1 month ago, transporting my Warlock back in time to the very first days of WoW. I was expecting a busy start to this new chapter of WoW, but I was still shocked to see so many players logging into our new home on Wild Growth US. Grouping up to have even a shot at tagging mobs wasn't something I even had thought of going into a populated server, but it's something that would prove to be a necessity. I was also able to get my first rune here in Northshire, one of 12 available in this first phase of the season. After the initial few hours of craziness, where I eventually made it to Goldshire, I knew I had to establish some goals I could focus on so the game wouldn't completely take over my life. Although it may have anyway. Here's the list I came up with. Reach level 25, collect all the Warlock runes, earn a Trainee's Sentinel Nightsaber through PvP, conquer the new Black Fathom Deeps raid, and explore all the flight paths. I have timestamps on the video bar if one of these goals appeals to you most, but what I'd like to do now is go through my experience with each of these goals and share my thoughts. This video is basically the culmination of a month of exploration and teamwork, and I hope I present a good mix of the more lighthearted and serious moments in the game. Going into Season of Discovery, I knew getting to the new reduced level cap of 25 would still be a time commitment, but one that would be much more manageable than going all the way from 1 to 60. Starting as a human player gave me a definite advantage when it came to finding quests. Even without any form of quest tracking like there is in later versions of the game, I was able to progress through the zones fairly easily, as I've basically memorized the human starting zones from level 1 to 30 over my years of playing. Not everything can be memorized though, and my first accident ended up happening while I was trying to help a paladin take out this level 11 rare who jumped us, but he ended up winning, so it was worth it. As I mentioned earlier, the population was a little overwhelming, especially in the first few days, but grouping up was most of the time very simple, and I ended up getting a lot accomplished. Being able to do something as simple as an escort quest was super exciting, and I also appreciated the updates to the water and lighting that I'm sure have been the standard for a while, but definitely were not there in the original game. I got invited to a great guild, and not long after, the Dead Mines were my very first on-level dungeon I've ever completed, which went rather well. Speaking of group content, something else that caught me off guard was how many areas were full of elite mobs. In the Burning Crusade and onward, a lot of these places like Stonewatch Keep and the Mogrosh Stronghold were downgraded to regular areas, but in Classic they are still designed for multiple players. However, there were already so many people clustered here that it wasn't a huge issue. Shadowfang Keep with my guild was a blast, and after escorting the missing Corporal Kishan back to town, I traveled to Stormwind and completed the Stresses of Iron questline, one of my all-time favorites, to reach level 25. The cherry on top? Earning the Dread Mage hat from the Noble Brew quest, which was a truly great addition to the fit. I don't think my character has ever looked more like a warlock. Runes are the flagship new feature in Season of Discovery and are the main way the developers are introducing new quests and NPCs into the game. Runes augment the powers of players and, in the words of the devs, make everyone a little OP to keep up with the slightly tuned up enemies in the game. After going through and earning all 12 Warlock runes currently in the game, I'm overall feeling very positive about the new system, even if I did have my Demonic Grace rune stolen from me by a gnome, and I had to spend another hour collecting the materials again. I won't spoil all the runes here, but I did like how there was quite the variety in how you acquire them. From simply buying a suspicious item, to casting a dark ritual, to using Drained Soul on specific enemies, I think the devs did a really great job of adding some new content that still appeals to the feel of each class. The two most difficult high-level runes to get right now are definitely Demonic Pact and Metamorphosis, both of which can be very helpful when doing dungeons and raids as a warlock. Demonic Pact is obtained by completing a quest line for this goblin, and all I can say about this is thank goodness for the auction house. After a bit of gold farming, time on the auction house, and trekking into the Stone Talon Mountains to salvage some shredder parts, I finally was able to purchase the rune from this guy. On a different note, I thought it was brilliant to have the Metamorphosis rune quest pick up right after another warlock quest that was already in the game. After reforming the staff of Soren Ruck, some further adventures lead you to freeing this mysterious traveler who helps unlock the final rune. I'm curious to see what they do with this character when more runes are announced in the future, but in the meantime, we get to enjoy our edgy demon form, just not on flight paths. What better way to try out WoW on an actual server than to experience the brand new PvP event, the Battle for Ashenvale? I did want to try it out just for the sake of it, but to be honest, it was just to earn the Trainee's Sentinel Nightsaber.
Hey, look, that house is the only reason we started working this block in the first place. Ever since I laid eyes on that house, I wanted it. So let's take it one step at a time, okay? We'll unload the van, we'll get a bite to eat, we'll come back about...
I was excited to learn that the mount, which boosts your speed while traveling in Ashenvale, only requires you to reach friendly status with the Silverwing Sentinels, meaning I really only ended up doing the Battle for Ashenvale 2 times, and then even tried my luck in the Warsong Gulch battleground. The world PvP was pretty minimal, and with over 100 players thundering across the forest, we made pretty quick work of the bosses and claimed the territory for the Alliance. Warsong Gulch was more of a mixed bag, and after getting absolutely rolled by some pre-made horde squads, I actually ended up getting a flag capture the next day, which was a nice surprise. I spent all my hard-earned gold on the new mount, which looks super awesome and was going to save me some time traveling to the new raid. The murky ruins of Black Fathom Deeps are the final challenge for players in Phase 1 of Season of Discovery. This is the first new bit of group content ever added to Classic, a repurposed 5-player dungeon now converted into a 10-player raid with new loot and boss mechanics. With some small updates to the lore here and there, I knew I wanted to complete all of the quests in this area. A few failed grouping attempts later, I made it inside the raid with a full team, and we didn't have hardly any difficulty with the bosses. The added void elements I think are a great touch considering this place is heavily tied to the old gods, and updating the Akumai model with the glowing eyes and such was really neat. This was my very first raid ever, and I think it was a great first experience. It seems like Gnomeregan is next in line for a revamp in Phase 2 with the new level cap of 40, and I'm curious to see where the game will go from there. If you're someone who's hesitant about trying out BFD, I'd highly recommend doing it at least once just to see what it's all about. Last but not least, I ended up adding this goal a little later on to push my world exploration to the limit. Finding all the flight paths on both continents would save me a lot of time in Phase 2 and beyond, but it sure did cost me in terms of time and money for repairs now. I also learned quite a bit about the classic world as it compares to Wrath of the Lich King. Notably, there are quite a few flight points that were added later on, like Rebel Camp, Thondroral River, Emerald Sanctuary, and Forest Song, which made my job easier for the time being, but it's going to make travel slightly slower later on. Getting to Silithus was surprisingly simple. After jumping down from Tanaris, I only died once in Ungoro Crater, and that was to this traitorous Horde NPC who jumped me when I got to the one supposedly safe spot in the entire zone. Also, it turns out there are far fewer graveyards in Classic WoW, meaning traveling back to where you left off takes a much longer chunk of time. But hey, I've played Dark Souls, and nothing can top that. Reaching the Scarab Wall was quite the feat, but I was surprised to learn the gate is already open on Season of Discovery. Fellwood and the Timbermaw tunnels were especially challenging to get through, but getting the flight paths for Moonglade and Winterspring felt pretty good. Back in the Eastern Kingdoms, wandering through the Plaguelands wasn't too difficult, but when I finally reached Light's Hope Chapel, it was interesting to see the place was basically empty since the Naxxramas raid hasn't opened up yet. The only two flight points that remained were the Burning Steps and the Searing Gorge, neither of which were too painful. It turns out, the only graveyard in the Searing Gorge is at Thorium Point, same as the Flightmaster. This meant all I had to do was say hi to some magma elementals, respawn, and snag the flight point. Mission accomplished. Not sure if this was truly the best use of my time now, but it will surely save me some headache later on when I'm able to level up again. And that's pretty much what I've been up to for the past month in Season of Discovery. I really want to thank all of you, my viewers, and all of you who've teamed up with me in WoW for making this journey possible. If you see me in game, send me a message and I'll add you to this list of Jediwarlock sightings. It's always super fun to run into someone who recognizes me, and I'd love to group up with you on a quest sometime. I'm really looking forward to 2024, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, may the Force be with you.